Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
And today we're talking about The Neverending Story, released in 1984, directed by Wolfgang Petersen, written by Wolfgang Petersen and Herman Weigel, based on the novel by Michael Ende. I don't know if that's how you say his name or not, but that's what I'm going with. And starring Barrett Oliver, Noah Hathaway, Gerald McCraney in a small scene, Deep Roy, looking for, there she is, Tammy Stronach. I don't know if that's how you say her name.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Stronach.
And that's pretty much all the names I recognize. Alan Oppenheimer is the voice of Falkor, but that's pretty much all the people I knew.
Mhm.
Now, Stu, this might hurt you a little bit, but similar to the Goonies, I think this might have been the second time I've ever seen this movie, watching it today.
That doesn't offend me as much
As the Goonies?
The Goonies.
That's good. I know I've seen the movie because there were three things that I remembered, like I had three distinct memories before watching it today. And one was Bastian running in the school with the book under his jacket. For some reason, that stuck out to me. I remember the rock biter.
Yeah.
And then I had a memory of Bastian riding Falkor in the real world.
Yeah.
And so, but everything else was basically new to me.
So you remember the beginning of the movie, the rock biter, and the end.
And the very end of the movie, yeah. And actually, when it first shows Bastian riding Falkor, it's in Fantasia, and I was like, maybe this, because I've also seen Neverending Story 2. I don't remember much about that one at all, although I do remember that he's in Fantasia a lot more. Like Jonathan Brandis is in that one, and I was a big Jonathan Brandis fan as a kid.
Yeah.
And he plays Bastian, and he's in Fantasia like throughout that whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, maybe that's like the beginning of Neverending Story 2 was him flying Falkor like in New York or something. And then, of course, he asks for like one more wish, and I go, oh, okay. I was like, all right, never mind. This is the movie. But yeah, but everything else, like I didn't really remember anything else. All of Atreyu's quest and all that stuff. I mean, that's the majority of the movie. Yeah. I didn't remember any of that.
Yeah. This is a movie that has always been around. So I don't have a first time memory of watching this. I remember loving it as a kid. I still like the movie, but I can see its flaws greatly, a lot more now. But like I said, it's always been around, and I've always enjoyed this movie. So the movie's based on a book,
yeah,
of the same name, and it takes a lot out of the book. Like half the book is missing from this movie.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
And it's very as far as stories go, it's very by the book.
Mm-hmm.
At least the Fantasia part of the movie is very structured, hero's journey by the book.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
And it's that's probably the movie's biggest flaw, is that it takes all of the nuance that was intended to be in the book. Because I've never read the book,
right?
But I hear from fans of the book and the creator, it just the movie is it goes so far. I wouldn't even say go so far. It takes a lot out. You can tell that there are chunks of the story missing.
Right.
It's not greatly detailed when it comes to the narrative. But one of the things that I love about this movie, probably the best thing about the movie, is the aesthetic.
Yeah. This
is a very magical, fantastic type movie. So they nail the aesthetic. But yeah, it's as far as the story, it's lacking. But there's still enough of it that I enjoy about
Yeah, I agree. I read a little bit of the trivia after watching the movie, and I
it. Me
read that
too.
the author didn't like the adaptation and actually went so far as to try to get his name. He actually tried to get the name of the movie changed
Mm-hmm.
because he felt like it was so different than his book that it didn't deserve, I guess, the same title.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize it was based on a book because I guess due to his dislike of the adaptation, they don't include his name in the opening credits.
They don't. They're in the closing credits.
They are in the end credits, yeah.
Not the opening credits.
But because I wondered right when I started the movie, I said, is this based on something? And it never said it in the opening credits, so I thought it was an original story by Wolfgang Petersen and the other writer whose name I forget. But now that I know it's based on a book, I can definitely see, and I did read it also. We probably read the same trivia here. There was like a couple scenes from the book that they were going to film, but because of effect limitations,
yes,
they couldn't do it. And one of them was like Falcor and Atreyu get attacked by like this.
Oh, wind giant.
Yeah. And they're like poisoned or something, which is why the gnomes are giving them medicine. And I thought, oh, that makes a lot more sense because it's.
Oh, you talk about the it was like a swarm of something that like formed a giant spider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would have been really kind of cool to see, but I can understand how in 1984 they were like,
I was gonna say, how are they gonna pull that off in 1984? But that is one of the charming qualities about this movie is that the practical effects are pretty good in this movie.
I was actually this scene is on right now. I'm playing the movie on my TV.
Me too.
And while he's talking to Morla, the ancient one, who turns out to be this like giant turtle, I thought the animatronics in that scene were incredible.
They are. They absolutely are.
And it's kind of disappointing because then when Falcor shows up, the animatronics on Falcor's face
are not great.
Not great. And I actually wondered watching the Morla scene. I was like, did they go back and like add digital like effects to this? Because the animatronics were just that good. Like when Morla's like about to sneeze, like you just see the facial expression and everything.
Yeah.
Like the animatronics on that one were incredible.
Yeah, I think Falcor is probably out of the like the practical effects, he's probably the worst thing in the movie because everything else looks fine. The rock biter looks cool. The rock
biter does look cool.
The giant bat thing,
right.
looks cool. I like the costume design because I'm watching they're at the Ivory Tower right now.
Okay, yeah.
And Moses Gunn's character is explaining to Atreyu what's going on, and the costume design is really good. Like I said, the effects are really good. This movie has a really immersive aesthetic, and it really nails the tone and the feel. But it's just severely lacking in story.
Yeah. And it's something having only seen this now probably twice, it wasn't something that I guess I really paid that close attention. Like I was enjoying watching the movie, but I guess I didn't really think that I was like, I wish there was more to the story here. Cause I don't know. I just kind of got immersed, I guess, with the kid reading the story. Cause the kid was really into the story. Yeah. Bastian reading the book. And I thought, I was this scene really surprised me when Atreyu's horse, whose name I don't remember now. Artax. Drowns, I guess, in the swamp of sadness. I was like, holy cow, they killed the horse.
Yeah. They killed the horse in like the first 20 minutes.
Right.
That scene, I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of the saddest scenes in a kids movie that I have ever seen.
I agree.
Probably next to Mufasa dying in The Lion King.
Right.
Is Atreyu sinking in the swamp of not Atreyu, Artax sinking in the swamp of sadness. It is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
To a little kid, and even now I'm 32. I still got a little emotional. The crazy thing is like you don't even spend that much time with the horse, and it's that scene alone still holds its weight. So good job for Wolfgang Petersen on that scene.
and I think good job on Noah Hathaway too, because just the way he is pleading with Artax to pull himself out and don't he just, that part, it just gets to me. I don't think Noah Hathaway is necessarily bad in this movie. I do think he comes off kind of whiny a lot.
A little bit.
My favorite scene with him is when he's talking to Gamork at the end, right?
Yeah.
And he says something, he's very confident, and he's like, I'm a brave warrior. And then they're like, then stop the nothing. He goes, but I can't. And I was like, he went from brave warrior to whiny kid real fast. I was like, okay.
Yeah. And I also read in trivia that that's not even Noah Hathaway's voice.
Yeah, which I thought was kind of crazy.
That's another actor's voice, which I went to the trivia to see, to look at to see if it was something about the ADR, because that's one of the things that's off about the movie, especially with the some of the inhabitants of Fantasia.
Yeah.
Like Deep Roy's character and
right.
the gnome elf looking thing.
Yeah.
Their ADR is not quite matched up with the movement of their mouth.
Right.
And I went looking for that and then discovered that it was a completely different voice for Atreyu, which I was very surprised by, because that ADR is pretty decent.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that it wasn't his voice.
Yeah, I didn't either. I would have never guessed that.
Like,
that
I could
wasn't
tell
Noah
it. I
Hathaway.
could tell it was ADR, but the voice matched up with his face really well.
Right. I knew Deep Roy was ADR'd because, or dubbed, I guess you could say, because I'm pretty sure Deep Roy has like a Indian accent in real life, and so they gave him like an American accent or something. And I wondered too. This movie was made in Germany, and so I wonder if some of the actors were German and maybe they dubbed over them with American accents rather than having German accents or something.
Probably.
But Noah Hathaway, it did say in the trivia that he has an accent, I guess, or
he does,
or maybe, or does, I don't know, because he doesn't have an accent in this movie, does he?
He has like a slight English accent.
Okay, so maybe
like
Noah Hathaway doesn't have an accent, and that's what the trivia said, and they kind of added one. But yeah,
because he's American. He was born in Los Angeles, so I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
so he wouldn't have an accent. So maybe they gave him a little bit of an accent. That'd be kind of disappointing too. To be, I mean, he's essentially the main character. I know Bastian's technically the main character, but like,
as a little kid, I always thought that Atreyu was the main character. Yeah.
It'd be kind of a bummer to be like the main character of a movie, and then you go see the movie and it's not your voice. It's somebody else's voice. You're like, what? I mean, maybe they told him, I don't know, but
yeah. See, now we're coming up on the swamp of sadness.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
It's that might be my favorite scene just because of the like it's just such an emotional scene.
It is such a heavy scene.
Yeah. It was well done.
Yeah, and the look of the swamp is fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh man, it looks like a real place.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100% with what you said. The best thing about this movie is the aesthetic. Like, it just looks incredible. And you know, some of it, the animatronics and whatnot, some of it looks a little dated, but it feels like a fantasy land, and you know, that whole aspect of it, I think, just feels very real, and I like it a lot. Yeah.
The movie starts out with Bastian at home, you know, and he's talking with his dad, and he has he's getting bad grades in school, and
right.
Didn't try out for the swim team. His dad is disappointed, and his dad just leaves. And I'm
does. You're right.
Yeah, and I'm like, you gave him that speech, and then you just say, "All right, I'm gone. Don't be late for school." And then Bastian turns around, is like, "I was on time for school yesterday. What are you talking about?" So it's like, you clearly
lock up behind you.
Yeah, you're clearly not paying attention,
right?
Paying that much attention to your kid. And I get it. You know, the 80s, early 90s, that was a different time. You had latchkey kids. But there's definitely there's not a lot of nurturing going on in that household.
No. Yeah, I
and
agree.
I think that's probably because the mom died.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe the dad doesn't know how to be that yet, or something. And it's possible, we don't know how long ago the mom died, so it's possible the dad is still grieving in a way too.
I think they do mention it. I think he says some specific amount of time.
Does he?
I can't remember what it was.
The guy that plays his dad is Gerald McCraney, and I really like him. Did you ever see the sitcom Major Dad?
No, but I've heard of it.
Yeah,
I know what it is. Yeah.
I used to watch reruns of that when I was like visiting my grandparents, like on USA. I don't know. It was a fun show, and that's what I will always remember him as is Major Dad. But I've seen him in other things. He's one of those actors that's like he was perfect on Major Dad. He plays a Marine, and he just has that like Marine kind of presence. And so he's almost one of those guys who you wouldn't expect to be an actor because he's so.
He has
he just has that kind of presence,
a militant presence.
Yeah. But he's really good in everything I've seen him in. He's good in this movie too. I do have one, not really a question, just an observation, I guess. He pours orange juice and then one single egg into a blender.
Yeah, I was wondering what he was doing with
and drinks that. And I was like, how did people not get like salmonella all the time in the 80s? Because I can't. But at the same time, once it was blended, it actually kind of looked good. I was like, do I want to try that? I was like, no, I don't want to try that.
I mean, I've recently discovered runny scrambled eggs.
Oh yeah,
they're fantastic.
Yeah, I like my eggs runny. Like if I do, like over easy, that's the way I like to order my eggs. But scrambled too. I think my wife likes them to be cooked beyond, basically dry.
That's how my mom likes it, and I didn't like eggs because of that.
Yeah,
It wasn't until like a year ago that I was like, just undercook them,
and they're great.
And they're great. I also add a little heavy cream to mine to make them fluffy.
Oh yeah,
like,
that's always
fluffy
good too.
And runny. Oh my god. Next, I gotta try them and blend them in some orange
with some OJ. Yeah, I'm very curious. I mean, it's like in Rocky. Rocky wakes up and I can't remember if it's like 3 or 4 eggs, but he just cracks 3 or 4 eggs into a glass and chugs it, and
pure protein.
Exactly. But and that's that's the only thing I can assume is he was like, well, I'll get my orange juice and a little bit of protein with my orange juice, and that'll be my breakfast. Maybe that's his everyday breakfast. I have no idea, but.
No thanks. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
I'm not drinking 4 eggs.
But I agree with what you say. He's basically, he gives his kid the talk. Get you're old enough to get your head out of the clouds, even though the kid's like 10.
Yeah,
and
that conversation kind of like introduces the subtext of the movie. How when we grow up, we lose our imagination. And Bastion, he's a kid. He's still holding on to his imagination.
Yeah.
And because of the death of his mother, his drawings and having his head in the clouds is just his kind of escapism from his sorrow.
Right. Yeah. And the dad doesn't even really listen to him because he talks about, he's like, your teacher told me you were drawing horses on your math paper or whatever, and he goes, they were unicorns.
Unicorns.
He's like, he goes, what? Nothing.
He's like, nothing. Yeah, so yeah, he's not very good at being
present,
a nurturer.
Yeah.
And then we get to the bully scene, and one of the bullies I actually recognized from It.
Oh, really?
Yes. He It was 6 years later. But he was I believe he was Belch in It.
Okay, yeah, one of them looked familiar to me, so that's probably where I know him from.
Yeah, I think it was. Let me go back to IMDb. Chris Eastman. Yeah, he was bully number 1. Yeah, and he was Belch. Yeah,
wow, that's impressive. Good eye.
I know faces. I'm terrible with names though.
Yeah, I like the one thing I liked about the bully scene. It's never fun seeing our main character get bullied, but he gets tossed in the trash and he pulls himself out of the trash and comes around the corner and the bullies are there and he goes, no, not again. He just takes off. They were about to put him right back in the trash. But then that's how he runs into the bookstore. And I like that whole scene in the bookstore where the guy's immediately like, get out of here. I don't like kids. And he just assumes because the kid is a kid that he doesn't read books. He tells him the arcade's down the street.
Right.
And Bastian says, he's got 180 whatever books.
Yeah, he goes down the list of books.
Yeah, and he's like, comic books don't count, Which,
But he started naming some pretty good books, pretty big books.
Yeah. And surprised the bookstore owner. And so I have to assume that the bookstore owner wanted him to take that book.
Absolutely.
Because if he didn't, he wouldn't have just left it there, and he wouldn't have told the kid, this book is not for you, and then left it there for him.
Right. Like, come on. Like that's like saying don't press the red button.
Right, exactly.
Of course you're gonna press the red button. But yeah, I do like that scene. The bookstore owner was very curmudgeon-y.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a sense of enigma to him. Yeah.
I'm actually very curious about him. Like, is he actually from Fantasia? Is he somebody that knew?
Yeah.
Like, knows that they need the Earthling boy type of thing, Is it? I'm very curious.
I would like to think that I think his name is Coriander. I think that Coriander read the book as a child and had all these same experiences.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
So I think the reader, because at the end of skipping ahead a little bit, at the end of the book, or not in the middle, at the end of this book, because in the real book it's the middle,
it's the
but
half of the book,
in the movie it's the end. At the end of this book, Fantasia's destroyed. He has to rebuild Fantasia. So I think each reader has to
rebuild
to do that
Fantasia.
Same thing.
Oh, that's cool. I like that idea. Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah,
that's
or that could just be me overthinking.
I like that. I kind of like that theory that like each kid that reads it, is the Earthling child that has to kind of save the day and then rebuild Fantasia. I think that's a really
and it's
cool.
up to each Fantasia is different. It's up to that kid's imagination, and because it's an ongoing cycle, that's why it's called the Neverending Story.
Ah, very cool. That's actually brilliant. I never put that together. Of course, I've only seen the movie twice. And once was like over 20 years ago, so. No, but that's really cool. That actually makes me kind of almost appreciate the movie even more, I think, thinking about it like that.
Yeah, like I mean it's the story, like the source material, it's a great concept. I love the subtext. And the movie, even though it has its problems, like the movie on its own, like regardless of it if it's an adaptation or not, the movie on its own is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I said, it lacks in the narrative, but I wouldn't call it a bad movie. Now, as far as an adaptation, it's not a great adaptation at all.
Right.
Because it takes out so much of the things that made the book great. From my understanding, because I didn't read the source material, but I heard it takes out all the nuance and only tells half the story.
Right.
Which I could definitely see. I could definitely see that bothering the original author.
Yeah.
And I could see why he wanted to take his name off of the project and change the name of it. Unfortunately, I know Leonardo DiCaprio and Kathleen Kennedy tried to remake it, but they couldn't get the rights to it, and she said that it probably won't ever be remade. Yeah, because of this particular movie.
Right, like the author is like, no, they screwed it up once. I don't want them to do it again.
And it's unfortunate because they wanted to make it closer to the book and include all of the nuance and the details that the original author had put in the book.
And I know there's quite a big following for this movie. I know this is one of those kind of childhood favorites of people's. But I remember while I was watching it today, especially during the kind of the Falcor scenes, I kind of thought to myself, this movie, it'd be interesting to see this movie remade today with CG. Obviously, I don't think it would have the same charm as this movie does because
it wouldn't.
the part of the aesthetic that we love so much is all those practical sets and practical effects.
Yeah,
and
if I remade it, I would keep most things practical.
Yeah, I agree. I would that's how it should be done. Like have a lot of practical sets, and then the stuff that was a little too difficult for 84. Like we could see the scene with that swarm of bugs or whatever that turns into a giant spider, and Falcor himself and stuff. That like even Gamork, you know, he was a pretty decent animatronic, but it was a lot of like, you know, it's hard to make a wolf look like it's actually talking. And so they could do that probably a little better with CG. And you could even do animatronic with some CG kind of enhancements to it a little bit. So it kind of has a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But I thought that watching it, I said, you know, that's actually would be kind of interesting to see if this movie ever got remade. But I guess unfortunately we may never see it because I guess the author felt burned by this film, even though everybody loves this movie. Well, I don't know about everybody, but I mean, it's got, like I said, it's got a pretty big
following. Yeah.
And I think it did well. It had 2 sequels.
They're not very good.
No, I know. But still,
the second one is like barely passable. The third one is.
Yeah, I've never seen the third one. I know Jack Black is in it, and I remember somebody asked him one time.
He's the villain.
They were like, Jack Black.
He's the leader of the Nasties.
Somebody asked him, like, you know, why he did Neverending Story 3 or something. And he was like, that was the beginning of my career. He's like, you don't get to pick and choose what roles you get at the beginning of your career. And so, I mean, thought that was kind of funny.
Well, yeah. So he gets the book from Coriander, goes into the attic of the school.
Right, because he's late for his math test. He looks in, realizes they're already testing, and he's like, well, screw that. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go take this test. And so he goes up to the attic of the school, which I thought that's the creepiest attic. I mean, I don't know how many schools have attics like that, but...
Yeah, I've always wondered that. I'm like, did my school have an attic and I just didn't know?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. But like, especially when he's there at night, you know, like, he kind of creeps downstairs and the janitor's like turning off the lights or whatever, and he just goes right back up to the attic.
Yeah.
That's when it gets like, he's like, starts looking around. He's like, there's a lot of creepy stuff up here, actually.
Yeah. A lot.
And he's about to leave, but then he's like, Atreyu wouldn't quit yet. And I was like, all right, kid, whatever. And again, I thought about it watching it. I was like, wouldn't his dad like be freaked out that he's not home yet? But I guess his dad's probably, again, not very present. And so maybe, who knows, you know, maybe his dad works late and he didn't realize it yet or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. I assumed that Bastion was a latchkey kid, you know, lock the door behind you and I'll see you when I get home.
Right, yeah. Cook yourself some dinner.
Yeah, make yourself some dinner. But yeah, so he's in the attic, he starts reading the book and the rock biter and the elf and the
Deep Roy's character.
Deep Roy, he rides a snail.
The racing snail.
The racing snail, yes, the racing snail, and they're talking about the nothing.
Yeah.
And it has pretty much eradicated
parts of Fantasia.
Parts of Fantasia where they're from, so they all kind of commune in this place because they have nowhere to go. And the rockbiter tells I don't know if it was this scene or I think it's in the scene in the end where his family gets pretty much killed by the nothing.
Right.
And that was pretty sad. But they don't really explain what the nothing is, but I always assumed it to be, you know, just growing up.
Right. Yeah.
Because it
your imagination kind of fading.
Your imagination fading and your creativity and your zeal just fading because, you know, you're growing up and you're experiencing different kinds of things, and it's a really interesting and a really resonating subtext to the movie. It's just unfortunate that as great as that message is, that it doesn't the story doesn't expand on it as much as it could.
Right. I do find it interesting that we start off the Neverending Story with those characters. It's like because those are the first three characters in Fantasia that we meet, and we don't really spend a whole lot of time with them. We end up going with like that gnome looking character to the
Ivory Tower.
Ivory Tower. Thank you. I was the Iron Throne was in my brain. I was like, that's not right. That's Game of Thrones. The Ivory Tower. And like they peek in on kind of the council meeting or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's when we learn about Atreyu being the only one that can save us, this great warrior from the Plains people named Atreyu.
Yeah.
Who ends up being a child. And then at that point we're with Atreyu for the rest of the movie.
Yes.
Until we do come across the Rockbiter again. And that was another really sad scene where the Rockbiter is saying, he's like, I thought these look like good, strong hands.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's like, he had the gnome guy and Deep Roy and the snail and the bat in his hands, and the nothing still took them, and he couldn't do anything to save them. And I was
that's what it was. It wasn't. Yeah, it was the guys that he met at the beginning of the movie. Okay.
And I was like, good Lord, this is a sad movie.
Yeah, it's sad. It as far as provoking emotion, the movie does its job.
Yeah, that's very true.
Because it makes you feel sad when you're supposed to feel sad. It makes you feel hopeful when you're supposed to feel hopeful.
Right.
But not much happens in the movie.
Right. No, it's very true. You're right. I mean, it's basically Atreyu going
ironic.
From... Right. It's essentially, the rest of the movie is basically Atreyu going from one location to another, being told, you got to go to this place instead. So he goes to that location.
Yeah.
And then them going, you got to do this instead. And, it's like, there's not a whole lot of meat to it. Like you said, that is where it kind of is where the narrative lacks.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of a side-scrolling video game, like an old-school video game. Just
go from one level to the next
stage until you get to the boss, and then that's the end of the game.
Right.
So that it kind of reminds me of that. Atreyu goes to that's where the horse drowned.
Yeah, the swamp of sadness.
One of the saddest scenes ever.
Right. And then from there he goes. That's when he meets
the turtle.
Yeah.
Morla
of the Ancient One or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the turtle. I like the turtle's character, and I like one of the things I was very impressed about that scene was every time Atreyu gets sneezed on, he is completely unfazed by it. Like at one point he like kind of steadies himself because he knows the sneeze is coming and he doesn't want to just get thrown back. But the fact that he just gets a bunch of turtle snot on him, he's like, whatever, I don't care. And he just kind of keeps talking.
His horse just died.
Well, I don't
think he's concerned about turtle snot.
Yeah, I mean the world is at stake here. So
yeah, the world is literally ending. Turtle snot is the last of his worries right now.
That's true. Very good point. But I like how Morla even at one point says something about they're like, we don't care. We don't even care that we don't care.
We don't care. And Atreyu was like, who are you talking to? It's just you and me. Right. Like, who are you talking about? We.
We've been alone so long, we started talking to ourselves. Thought that was great. I like that character a lot. That was pretty cool. And like you said, the animatronics were really good in that scene.
Oh yeah. They're excellent. So he's in the swamp of sadness, feeling sorry for himself, and then Falkor comes in and
he almost gets attacked by Gamork.
Yes,
we see Gamork kind of approaching him
in the bushes. Yeah,
as he's kind of sinking into the swamps of sadness. Until Falkor comes and saves the day. And that was one of the limitations of 1984 because it shows Falkor kind of flying towards him, and then there's this weird, awkward scene where Atreyu kind of reaches up and grabs like a practical arm or something, and they just kind of like lift that off screen, and then it shows them flying again. It's like you're like, it didn't quite match.
That was not really edited to the best of its ability,
but what can you do? It was 1984.
Yeah, and then we meet Falkor, the Wish Dragon, and
the Luck Dragon.
The Luck Dragon. Why do I call him the Luck Dragon? He is lucky, because he saved Atreyu.
Yep.
And I never liked the way he looked.
I've never been a big fan of the way Falcor looked either. I didn't realize, and again, it was one of those things where obviously I said I had 3 distinct memories. Falcor is I knew Falcor from Neverending Story, probably mainly because of the cover.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought he had all like white fur. So when we see that shot of
he had scale
of Atreyu waking up, he's all scaly. I was like, oh, weird. And then he says he's a luck dragon, and I go, oh, okay, I guess that part, the scales kind of make a little bit more sense then. But he honestly just looks like a big stretched out dog.
Yeah.
And so I think they could have done a little bit better with the face.
Specifically, he looks like a boxer.
Right.
My grandmother had a white boxer, and every time I saw that dog, I thought of this movie.
You thought of Falcor? That's funny. I never really understood the appeal of Falcor, I guess, and I think that's because I thought he just looked so weird.
Yeah, probably.
And I'd be curious to know. I don't know if the original novel had like illustrations or not, but I'd wonder how Falcor was kind of described in the book, what he looked like.
I do. After watching this, it definitely makes me want to read the book. To see how much they actually left out of the movie.
Right. I read Howl's Moving Castle after we watched that movie.
Yeah.
It's not a bad book, but they definitely changed a lot, and I actually think the movie's better. I think they actually made better, the changes they made were for the better.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was an okay book. But that movie was really good. So I'd be curious to know if you were to read Neverending Story. And granted, it'll have a longer storyline because this is only half of the book.
Yeah.
But I wonder if you'll actually think, you know what, the movie actually, made some good choices here and there, or if the book is actually better.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
I don't see that happening.
Right.
Because
there's
a lot lacking, but we'll see. Where are we?
What wakes up by Falcor and finds out he's a luck dragon, and then he goes and sees those gnomes.
Yeah,
the scientific gnome,
gnomes. Yeah,
and the doctor gnome.
Yeah. And they're basically there to just provide exposition for the what are those, the sphinxes?
The Sphinx, yeah, the 2 gates that I forget what Atreyu says he's got to get to this place, and
the Southern Oracle.
Yeah, that's what it is. He's got to get to the Southern Oracle, and the scientific gnome is like, well, you can get there, but there's these 2 gates you got to get through first, and no one has ever made it through. Yeah. And they go to look at the gates, and it just so happens that some other adventurer is trying to...
That's awfully convenient.
Right, exactly. Some other adventurer is deciding to go through the first gate and gets obliterated.
Yeah. Like, he literally gets vaporized.
Yeah.
Because when Atreyu finally goes... walks up to the gate, all you see is his armor. His whole body is gone. Right. Was he riding a horse? I think the horse is gone too.
Yeah, I think the horse is gone too. Yeah. So yeah, not fun. Those sphinxes also, by the way, I think if this movie had been remade, would not be quite so
busty.
Busty, yeah, that's the word. There's this one shot where it's like from kind of Atreyu's point of view looking up, and I just remember going, wow. Okay.
Yeah. They definitely put some emphasis on the yabos.
That they did.
But somehow he gets through the first gate. I think it's because he has the Orin that's supposed to like protect him.
Could be.
Fun fact: Steven Spielberg has that hanging in his office.
That's right.
Yes. Gotta love IMDb trivia.
Yeah, you gotta love IMDb trivia. That would be cool to see, though. I would actually just seeing Steven Spielberg's office would be amazing. Right. But to see,
it'd be like going into the Batcave.
Yeah, it probably would be. I mean, he probably has. I mean, if his office has the Orin in it, I can't imagine he doesn't have like the Last Crusade Holy Grail and all this other stuff. It would be amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
I just watched this movie, but does it show Atreyu go through a second gate? I know the gnome says he's about to. He's like, he's all happy. He's like, he made it through the gate.
Yeah.
But then he says something about how he's about to go through the second gate.
I think it's the little mirror in the snow that he walks through. I think that might, because he's actually doing that now on the.
That's right, and he
on my
sees
screen.
Bastion.
Yeah.
And Bastion, which it works so well, I think, in the movie. But I'm wondering what Bastion reads when he's like, Atreyu walks up to the mirror and sees Bastion reading a book in his school's attic, and he's what?
I don't. I always assumed that what he was reading was a description of himself, and he's like, "There's no way that they could be describing me." But whatever he's reading must be spot on.
Yeah.
With how Bastion looks, so it must say like, Atreyu walks up to the second gate and sees, and not only sees his reflection, but sees a little boy locked away in a room,
with a blanket over his shoulders.
Yeah, with a blanket over his shoulder, reading a, it's something
by candlelight,
detailed, but not not calling out Bastion by his name,
right?
not too on the nose.
That does happen at the end though, because the Empress does, she talks about the Earthling boy and blah 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 blah, but then eventually she does call out his name. She's like Bastion, and so I wondered if that was that'd be text in the book.
I do want to talk about that scene, but I'll wait. We're gonna wait till we get there.
Sorry, yeah.
But yeah, even earlier in the movie when he's talking to the turtle, they hear Bastion scream.
Right, that's right, and he's like, "No way, they heard that."
Right, and I never understood why he screamed.
Right, and according to IMDb trivia, there was a deleted scene, or there was a scene that was going to be filmed that didn't get filmed, and I forget what it is, but it was a much scarier scene or something, and that's why he screamed. There was like a better reason for the scream.
Okay,
it was going to be. It might have been during the. No, that would have been it would have been after that. I forget what it was. I'll have to hold on. Let me look it up real quick.
Watching it this last time, it bothered me. Like I think the movie might have worked better without it. Because
without the scream,
without the scream. Because even when he's reading, Atreyu walking up to the second gate, he has a more subtle reaction to the I guess the meta aspect of the book, which I thought would have been better as the first reaction to him realizing that they are aware of his existence.
Yeah.
Rather than that random scream.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, this is wait, is this the second gate or is this the Southern Oracle? Because he's walking up to the Blue Sphinxes now.
Oh, right. But is that after the mirror?
That's after the mirror.
So I think the mirror is the second gate. The Blue Sphinxes are the Southern Oracle.
Okay,
right?
I think you're right.
So it says, according to IMDb trivia, 2 scenes from the book were written in the script, but ultimately scrapped due to special effects limitations. The first was the initial appearance of Falkor, where Atreyu rescues him from Urgrimol the Many, a swarm of poisonous wasps taking the form of a giant spider. This is where Bastion's scream being heard by the characters in the book was to have taken place. And also explained why Atreyu and Falkor are later seen being given medicine by the gnomes.
I guess, but maybe that's just on the Arthur. Why would he scream?
I mean, I would guess.
Is he that much into the story?
Well,
I have never been that immersed into anything.
Me neither, but this kid's really into the book.
Maybe a video game, because I remember playing. I remember playing Alien Covenant, and then when the alien comes out, I screamed. But I don't remember ever reading anything and wanting to scream out loud.
No, me neither. I mean,
where other people can hear me.
Yeah, right, exactly. I've read a few Stephen King books, and I've never once screamed out loud.
Do you know how loud you got to scream for the characters in the book to hear you?
It's true. Well, I also thought, I remember when he screamed like that, I thought somebody at the school surely heard him.
Right.
But no, nothing ever comes from that, because he does scream very loud.
Yeah.
Loudly. So yeah, but no, I agree with you. There was no real reason for him to scream. I'd have to almost rewind and go back to that scene to see if I think it just comes out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, it does. It comes out of nowhere.
Even Atreyu and Morla are like, the heck? You know? So, yeah, it's kind of weird. You're right. He is super into the book, though. The kid is. Like, I'm watching it right now, and every time something's like kind of, like, even right before he meets Morla, the Ancient One, he sees, like, Shell Mountain. It shows him, he's like, Morla, the Ancient One. And then he goes right back to reading. You know, it's like, he's, like, really into the book.
Oh, man. Yeah, he's like, savoring the experience because he's eating a sandwich,
right?
And he's like, you know what? I'm gonna save this for later. I'm gonna save this for later in the book.
We have a long way to go.
the book's not that big, bro.
Right? Just eat your sandwich, dude.
So then we get this. After he goes to the Southern Oracle, and I forget what they tell him.
I couldn't tell you either, honestly. I know that's sad having just watched it, but
right. I think they have to tell him that he has to go to maybe it's the Ivory Tower or back to the Ivory Tower. I don't know. Cause yeah, why did he end up back at the Ivory Tower, or was it?
Well, Fantasia got destroyed,
right?
And so he meets Gamork, and Gamork says, you know, I was the servant of the one behind the nothing, and I was sent here to kill the one person who could stop the nothing. His name is Atreyu. And so Atreyu's like, I'd rather die fighting, and so he kills Gamork.
Oh yeah, because Gamork doesn't know that that's Atreyu.
Right, when they first start talking, yeah.
Yeah, because he knew it. Did he ever see Atreyu's face?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so okay, that might be why he didn't recognize him when he
I assumed Gamork was running behind Atreyu.
Yeah,
until Falkor came and saved him. So
right, and then when he finally confronted him and saw his face, he didn't recognize him because he only saw him from behind. So that makes sense.
And then the world, I guess, starts falling apart, and that's Fantasia being destroyed by the nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so Falkor and Atreyu are literally flying in space, is what it looks like. And so Atreyu asks him, he says, do you think the Ivory Tower's still standing? And Falkor's like, let's hope so. And then it comes into view, and there it is, and that's where they go. Because it's like that's where the Empress is, so that's where he just goes. I guess it's the only place to go.
Yeah.
And that's when...
It just I don't know. It seems like everything was for naught.
right.
It's like you almost got obliterated by the
nothing.
Sphinxes.
Oh yeah.
Almost got obliterated by the nothing. Your horse drowned, and then everything is still destroyed.
And they say that Atreyu is the only one who can save Fantasia.
Apparently not.
But really, it's Bastion, and I don't know. I mean, I guess Bastion is following Atreyu, and so they say, like, you've brought the Earthling boy to the Ivory Tower, and I guess it's just because Bastion is reading Atreyu's story.
Yeah.
But it could have been anybody. Whoever the main character it's just because Atreyu, I guess, is the main character of the Neverending Story. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But yeah, but Atreyu technically does not save anything. It's Bastion by yelling out the new name for the Empress.
Atreyu just takes Bastion on the journey.
The ride, right?
Yeah. That's I don't like that.
It's a little, it's weird, and it's also weird that the Empress. It's like the Empress. He shows up and he's like, you know, I couldn't do it, and she's like, I know. She's like, I knew all this was gonna happen, type of thing. You know, it's just you're just like, what? He ends up back at the Ivory Tower, and it's like, we could have saved a lot of time if you had just come out at that council meeting and told me.
Right?
Told me about this Earthling kid.
Like, I went through all of it. My horse is dead because of you. My horse is dead.
Yeah.
All you had to do, like, you were right up the stairs.
Right. You could just just peeked your head out the door and been like, here's
like,
what
hey,
you
there's
do.
a boy reading the events of what's happening.
He just has to give me a new name.
Yeah, just give me a new name. That's all you gotta do is give me a new name. Everything will be cool.
Do you think Atreyu dies in that scene? Because that's actually what just happened.
No.
There's like the thing kind of cracks. Atreyu kind of gets knocked down, and they all yell. The Empress and Bastion kind of go, Atreyu. And then we don't see Atreyu again until after Bastion saves the day.
Yeah, I don't. I see what you're saying. Because he rebuilds Fantasia.
Right.
So maybe, okay. So maybe he
Because
maybe he
the
did
horse
die.
comes back. So
You're
I think maybe
right.
Atreyu dies right there.
Oh, wow. I didn't think of that. Yeah, Atreyu's probably dead. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is even,
you're right.
It's just kind
You're
of a
right,
sucky
because,
story for Atreyu.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, because now we're at the scene where Bastion, the nothing has completely obliterated Fantasia.
It's ripping apart the ivory tower.
Yeah, all but the ivory tower, which like you said is being ripped apart, and eventually it's just like one grain of sand.
That's right. Well, first she's like pleading with Bastion to give her a new name. And so finally
that's the scene I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Because she this actress, what was her name? Tammy Stronach?
Something like that, yeah.
She is fantastic.
She's really good.
She is really good.
Yeah.
Like stupidly good
I know, yeah.
in this scene. And it's unfortunate because she never acted again.
Yeah. And it's crazy to me that she's only 11 years old. I read in IMDb trivia that she like her front teeth she had lost her front teeth.
Yeah, she got casted and her front teeth came out and they had to put
and so she's got fake teeth.
Yeah.
Cuz watching this and granted she's got a lot of makeup on and stuff, so they're making her look older. But watching it I was like, is this a kid or is this like a 20-something-year-old that just looks like a kid?
I always thought that.
Yeah. And I think it's the teeth. Because she's kind of got bigger teeth, and if they're fake, that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think it's just because of the teeth. I mean, it's the teeth, it's the makeup and it's her performance.
And it's the performance. It's such a good performance.
Because they never say that the Empress is a child. She's childlike. So she could be 100 years old.
Exactly. Yeah.
But she has remained. She has sustained her youthfulness because of her imagination and she represents what children hope to be when they quote unquote grow up.
Right.
Retaining that enthusiasm and youthfulness and imagination. So, once again, her performance was amazing, and it's unfortunate that she was only in this one movie.
Right.
Because she is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
When she says, "Say my name," I'm like, man, dude, like say her name.
And she's got the tears rolling down her cheeks and everything. Yeah, I mean, so good. Yeah, very, very good. And so finally he yells out, and he talks earlier in the movie. This is the one thing that surprised me. He talks earlier in the movie about how he would give her his mother's name. He was like, that was a good name. And so I thought, not having seen the movie in forever, I thought he was going to be like, Laura
Sarah!
Or something. Yeah. But instead he says Moonchild. And I was like, is that his mom's name?
I didn't know he said Moonchild until maybe 4 years ago. I never knew what he said.
Oh, really?
And it's the way he's saying it. He puts so much enunciation on child that it sounds like a completely different word.
Oh, weird. Interesting.
He says Moonchild. It's like, what? What are you saying?
Interesting. I had the captions on, so I guess I just read Moonchild, and so I didn't really pick up on that, but I'll have to go back and listen to it.
Yeah, it sounds like, because there's a storm coming and then the nothing is happening, so you get all that audio and then this kid's light voice is screaming out this weird name, because who's named Moonchild?
Right? Yeah. I guess the Empress is now.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Bastion's. I don't know. Maybe Bastion's grandparents were hippies or something. They named,
his mom's. I can see Gerald McCraney, his dad, marrying somebody named Moonchild.
Yeah, bruh.
But then after that is when the only thing left of Fantasia is the one grain of sand.
Yes.
And she gives that to Bastion and tells him to make a wish. And there's another thing that surprised me, because again, I don't remember this movie, is he's like, well, how many wishes do I get? In my brain, I thought 1. And she was like, as many as you want. And I was like, dang, that's a sweet deal, dude.
Like, I get as many as I want with 1 grain of sand.
Right. I was like, that's awesome.
Sign me up.
Where's this book? Can I read this book? With every wish, it helps rebuild Fantasia even more. So, and then it's cool. We get to see a lot of the characters who obviously were killed by the Nothing, like the gnome and Deep Roy's character, and the Rockbiter, and even Atreyu and Artax are alive and well and thriving in Fantasia.
Yes. A very happy ending to an otherwise very sad movie.
Yes.
Talking about it, I hadn't realized how sad it was. Like the horse dies, Atreyu goes through some stuff, and like I said, it's ironic because he's going through all this stuff, but he's not doing anything.
Right.
He's just, like you said, he's just going from place to place, and a lot of the nuance in the subtext is in other scenes.
Right. Yeah.
But not a whole lot of that is with Atreyu and his journey.
Yeah.
But I still enjoyed it.
Me too. I actually was surprised at how much I kind of liked it watching it today. And of course, and another thing that surprised me reading in the trivia was that scene at the end was not originally in the script, with Bastion flying Falcor in chasing down the bullies, basically.
Yeah.
And I thought,
they didn't have an ending. Yeah.
How could it not have been in the script? We see him getting bullied in the beginning. We gotta see the bullies get their, gotta get their comeuppance or whatever. So it makes the most sense to have this be the ending of the movie, and yet they apparently had not come up with that ahead of time.
It makes sense for this movie as a singular entity, but the reason that I think they hadn't come up with an ending for the movie is because they chopped off half the book.
That could be true. Yeah, that's a good point.
So it was like, how are we gonna wrap it up in the middle of the story?
I wonder if they were planning on doing the second half of the book, like if this movie had done well. I mean, which it did.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, maybe because of, and I don't know how that worked with Neverending Story Part 2, because I don't think Neverending Story 2 is the second half of the book, but maybe it is. I don't know.
Maybe.
It came out like 5 years later. Yeah, so they had to recast everybody.
They had to recast everybody because by the time the movie came out, the kids were like 18.
Right. So they had to so it feels very disconnected because the kid, I mean, I like Jonathan Brandis as a kid, but he does not look anything like Barrett Oliver as Bastion.
No,
like you'd think they would cast, and the guy that I remember, Atreyu, doesn't look anything like Atreyu either. I don't think so.
No.
It's just kind of weird. But I wonder if they thought, if this movie does well, we'll do Neverending Story 2, where it'll be the second half of the book. But I don't know. I don't know if that was the plan or if they just were like, nah, let's just do the half of the book and be done. I have no idea.
I'll have to watch it one day. No time soon, because I remember not liking that movie very much. But I have to refresh my memory.
It is also on HBO Max, I believe. Neverending Story 2. Maybe I'll start it. I don't know if I can make it through the whole thing, but we'll see.
You're not gonna start it.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna start it right now, just because you said that. No, I was about to say we couldn't some of these questions, unfortunately, will not be able to be answered. Not that you and I would be able to reach out to him, but Wolfgang Petersen, he just passed away not that long ago, August 12th. Yeah.
Or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So he made some good movies. This was a German film, but I guess it was kind of his first American release movie. But then he went on to do In the Line of Fire with Clint Eastwood, which was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Outbreak, which I've actually never seen. Huh?
I was saying he did Troy as well.
Troy, yep. He did Air Force One, which I love Air Force One.
Yeah. I love Troy. Troy is one of my favorite movies.
He did another one. What was another one?
I think he did Das Boot.
He did do Das Boot, which I've never seen. I've always heard it's really good. Enemy Mine, which is I've never seen that either, but is this like a sci-fi kind of cult classic type thing? And The Perfect Storm. That was the other one that he did.
Oh yeah, I forgot he did that. Yeah.
So yeah, good director.
Yeah, he had a pretty solid filmography.
Yeah. Barrett Oliver, the kid that plays Bastion, the whole time I'm watching the movie, I'm going, I've seen this kid before. Where have I seen this kid? So I looked him up. Daryl, that was what it was. I looked him up and I was like, oh, he's the kid from Daryl, which is I probably haven't seen Daryl since I last saw Neverending Story, but
I know I haven't seen Daryl since I was a kid. I remember watching it on the Disney Channel.
Oh wow!
When we first got Disney, when we first got cable, and I was watching everything that I could watch.
Yeah. And Daryl was one of them.
Yeah, Daryl just happened to be on. So
that's awesome. Okay, so we got to talk about the music. It's interesting. The movie is credited as having two composers, and I think that's because I read, again, IMDb trivia, that I guess the German version of the movie was just done by Klaus Doldinger, but Giorgio Moroder did like the
synth sound,
the synth stuff, and wrote the music for the theme song.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody else wrote the lyrics. And so, but I guess that stuff was only on the American version.
Right.
But that theme song, I've heard that theme song numerous times. Even though I've only seen the movie twice now, probably. I have heard that song over and over and over again.
Yeah, and last year it got popular again because of Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's funny how that happens.
Yeah,
it's like that Kate Bush song that is like became like everywhere. #1 again. Yeah, yeah.
Man, could you imagine the checks that she's getting now?
Oh my gosh, she's like, thank you, Netflix.
And I believe she was the sole writer of that song, or maybe she owns the master or something. But her check is ridiculous.
She's getting paid.
Yeah, she's getting paid.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the theme song to this movie is an earworm. Once you hear it, you cannot get it out of your head. Right, you will go to bed humming this song and wake up humming this song.
Yep. Yep. It's funny, like because I think I sent you a list of movies that we haven't done yet for the podcast, and you were like, let's do the Neverending Story. And I think as soon as you said that, I probably out loud went, The Neverending Story. Like it's just what you do when you hear the title of the movie. That's what you do.
Oh man.
Well, Stu, I'd love to know what you would rate The Neverending Story.
It's a good question. Because I keep going back and forth between two scores.
Yeah.
Because I do enjoy this movie, but I can't justify how much is missing from it.
Sure.
Because of how much is missing, we get, scenes of, Bastion randomly screaming and stuff like that. So I think I'm gonna go with 3 out of 5 orange.
Okay, 3 out of 5 orange.
Yeah. I wanted to give it a 3.5, but I can't. I gotta stick with 3.
I kind of I feel like I'm in the same boat. I really enjoyed watching it, and some of the effects, some of the animatronics don't age super well.
Mm-hmm.
But the aesthetic I love. The Empress is just gives a fantastic performance for the few minutes she's on screen.
She is undoubtedly the best actor in this movie.
In the whole film.
Yeah, she gives the best performance in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I don't know. I kind of really enjoyed it. I'm disappointed in myself for not owning this movie. So
yeah, I got the Blu-ray. I've been watching.
Do you?
Blu-ray.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think I might have to grab it. So I'm actually leaning towards 3.5 racing snails. I think that's what I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give it 3.5. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, we'd love to know what you think about the Neverending Story. You can always let us know at our website, cinemaheroes.com. You can also tweet at us or comment on our Instagram. Both handles are at cinemaheroes. You can leave a comment on our Facebook, facebook.com/SM and SM podcast. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, of course, you can leave a comment down below. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you, no matter how you want to reach out to us. But I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.